Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Market Update, where we discuss leading financial and economic developments in Europe, Asia, and North America. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And first up, we begin in Asia. Land sales in China's smaller and less affluent cities, representing the vast majority of the country, have fallen to their lowest level in over a decade, demonstrating the serious challenges facing Beijing as it seeks to revive a sluggish property sector and shore up local government finances, a story we have been following very closely for years on my other channel, China Update. New data from Wind, a financial information provider, shows that in the first half of 2025, third-tier cities saw a 4% decline in total land transaction value to 362 billion RMB, $50 billion, compared to the same period last year. Fourth and fifth tier cities performed even worse, recording just over $10 billion and just under $10 billion in sales respectively, both record lows since Wind began tracking the data in 2011, thus making them the worst on record. The data can be seen presented here by UK-based The Financial Times. Although overall land sales across 337 Chinese cities rose 8% to 1.2 trillion yuan, or RMB, in the first half of the year, driven by strong demand in the major urban centers, these are the tier 1 cities, the total still ranks as the fourth lowest in Wind's history. Analysts say the ongoing divergence between larger, wealthier cities and the rest of the country reflects a structural shift in the market. Jeff Zhang of Morningstar noted that, quote, the issues will be persistent, end quote, citing weak demand and the glut of unsold homes. Empty homes are estimated at approximately 80 million in lower tier cities. Developers in these areas remain reluctant to invest in new land while grappling with large inventories of existing properties. Since China's property downturn began in 2021, housing prices and land sales have declined sharply. As we've discussed on China Update, households have lost between 15 and 20 trillion US in wealth from declines in housing prices. In June, new home prices across 70 cities dropped 0.3% month on month, despite policy efforts including interest rate cuts, completion of stalled projects, and repurposing vacant housing for social use. Lower tier cities have seen little relief. According to Nomura's chief China economist, Ting Lu, conditions in low tier cities remain dire despite intervention. A growing share of land sales is now concentrated in just 10 cities, with state-owned developers focusing on tier 1 markets like Beijing and Shanghai, where land sales rose 30% year-on-year in the first half. This means out of hundreds of major cities across the country, only 10 are driving the market. In contrast to this concentration, major developers have exited struggling regions, leaving local firms, often reliant on local government financing vehicles, to continue projects. These local government financing vehicles are effectively propping up the market by buying land from the same governments that fund them, Lu noted, adding that the real market situation is, quote, much worse, end quote, than official data suggests. With land sales comprising a major revenue source, local government income from land dropped 12% year-on-year to 1.1 trillion yuan at the end of May, the lowest since 2016. Highlighting the fiscal strain now confronting regional authorities. And remember, in the poorest regions, land is being purchased by local government financing vehicles themselves, financed by local governments who rely on land sales or land use sales for fiscal sustainability. It does not take a genius to know that this is not only unsustainable, but also incredibly dangerous. Next up, we move to North America. Harvard University is at the center of an intensifying standoff with US President Donald Trump's administration, which has unleashed a sweeping set of punitive measures against the Ivy League institution as part of a broader campaign to reshape elite higher education. Framing its actions as a crackdown on campus anti-Semitism and a defense of civil rights, though critics have argued that this is just a pretext, the Trump administration has frozen over $2.6 billion in research funding to Harvard, threatening its tax-exempt status, and attempted to ban international students from enrolling, moves that critics say aim to bring the university under political control. Harvard, in turn, has accused the government of violating its autonomy, free speech rights, and due process protections. At the height of the dispute is the administration's claim that Harvard has failed to address anti-Semitism on campus. Following protests linked to the Israel-Hamas conflict, Trump officials targeted specific university programs, including the Center for Middle Eastern Studies Studies and the Divinity School, alleging they foster an unsafe environment. The Department of Homeland Security has gone so far as to accuse Harvard of allowing foreign agitators to harass students and of maintaining ties to the Chinese Communist Party, allegations the university strongly denies. Trump's push against Harvard extends beyond funding. The administration has warned that Harvard may lose its accreditation and pushed legislation to increase taxes on its $53 billion endowment. A provision in the recently signed so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act significantly raises taxes on university investment income, costing Harvard potentially hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The university president has resisted the demands, calling them unconstitutional. Quote, "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study they can pursue," end quote, he said. Harvard has filed multiple lawsuits challenging the administration's actions, including freezing the funds and blocking the international student enrollment. Federal judges have granted preliminary injunctions in both cases. Nonetheless, pressure is mounting internally. While the majority of faculty surveyed oppose a deal, a growing minority, including prominent figures like Nobel laureate Eric Muskin and scientist Pitt Parker, argue that Harvard should seek a settlement to avoid further damage. Quote, "There are plenty of things Harvard could be doing and should be doing. To go ahead and do them is not caving. It's making the university better," end quote, said Muskin, suggesting that some of the reforms that the administration is pushing on Harvard and others enjoys support among some within the faculty. The financial implications of all this are stark. Harvard receives around $700 million annually in federal research grants and warns the freeze could imperil work on diseases like Alzheimer's and childhood cancer. The university has redirected $250 million from internal funds to maintain research operations, but says this is unsustainable. Meanwhile, Harvard faces pressure from the Department of Homeland Security, which subpoenaed officials over international student data and threatened its certification to host foreign students, jeopardizing the 27% of its student body that comes from abroad. Talks over a possible settlement have reportedly stalled, but Trump and the Education Secretary have suggested negotiations are ongoing. As the academic year approaches, questions hang over the future of Harvard's funding and global stature. If you want to be on top of the most up-to-date analysis on the biggest developments related to the most important markets around the world, consider subscribing to Market Update. Hit the bell notification icon and you will be. If you're getting some value from today's episode, don't forget to the like button, and if you'd like to help keep the channel financially sustainable, tips can be provided through the super like or super thanks icon on YouTube. And finally for today, we move to Europe. Britain will be required to contribute financially to the European Union's new €150 billion defence initiative, the Security Action for Europe, SAFE, if UK companies are to benefit from its procurement projects, according to diplomats speaking to European media outlets. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer announced in May that the UK would join the SAFE scheme as part of a broader effort to reset ties with the EU. He argued that the initiative would unlock opportunities for the British defence industry and support domestic jobs. However, EU officials have clarified that access to EU-backed contracts will come with conditions. Under the proposed terms, London will have to pay a percentage of the value of any contracts awarded to UK companies through the fund. Quote, "There should be a fair balance as regards the contributions and the benefits," end quote, one EU diplomat explained, pointing to rules that require non-EU participants such as the UK, Canada and others to financially offset the benefits they gain from the fund. SAFE aims to bolster Europe's military capacity in response to escalating threats from Russia and recent calls by US President Donald Trump for Europe to assume greater responsibility for its own defense. By leveraging EU credit strength, the scheme seeks to mobilize €800 billion in total defense spending by 2030, prompting more coordinated procurement and addressing long-standing inefficiencies in Europe's fragmented defense industry. The exact size of the UK's financial contribution is still under negotiation, with details expected to be finalized and published this week. France is reportedly pushing for a higher UK contribution, while Germany and others are keen to avoid discouraging British participation. To qualify for SAFE-funded contracts, UK defence products must be made up of at least 65% components from SAFE members, which include the EU, Ukraine, Norway, Switzerland and other associated states. Without a broader agreement on budget contributions and supply chain security, UK companies will be limited to providing no more than 35% of the value of any procured product. A UK Cabinet Office spokesperson told UK-based Reuters that it was premature to comment on ongoing negotiations, but emphasised the strategic importance of the collaboration. Quote, "It is in all our interests for the UK and EU to bring together our unique capabilities and expertise to make Europe a safer, more secure, and more prosperous place." End quote. Okay, that is today's episode of Market Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Tuesday. Have a productive week, and I will see you for a new episode tomorrow.